Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Fatmata here from Traditionally Inspired Meaningful Art, and I just wanted to hop on quickly and say Happy New Year. I hope you're having a wonderful start to 2022. Very excited that we've made it. So I'm hoping to share with you a lot of content about just my year and wrap up of 2021 and the makes that I did, my favorites, and maybe some plans for the new year. I know I just recently shared with you some of my late fall, early winter plans, and I am working on those, so I'm really excited to see some progress there. But today's video, I want to share with you by far what I think is probably one of my most favorite makes of 2021, something that I completed at the end of December that I'm just so smitten over, and it is my first ever from start to finish quilt. I did a baby quilt for a really good friend of mine and for my best friend as well, and it's an heirloom baby quilt, and I documented it. I've gotten permission and they've said that I can share it with you, so I'm really excited to just show you my behind the scenes process of making this heirloom baby blanket. Some of the things that I think would be important for you to know, just why it's so meaningful to me and why I wanted to make it to begin with, is that this is my best friend and her little sister. And for those of you who have been watching the channel for the full year, you might have remembered that in the red collection, I had a wedding to go to back in April. And I was saying that it's my best friend and her little sister. So it's sort of like, and it's also my little sister's best friend. We're family at this. We're family. So she is expecting, and I wanted to give them something super special for the baby. This year has been filled with so many ups and downs, and one of the terrible losses that we had is that they lost their father this year. And when thinking about something that I can do using my talents to kind of lift their spirits or give them just that piece of comfort, I thought maybe I could quilt a blanket or blankets for them using their dad's old button-up shirts. And of course, I was sitting down and the idea just struck me, and my best friend was really awesome and allowed me to go and pick out some of the shirts. So in this video, I'll show you what I picked out. I'll also show you the making process. My friend said that I could share her reaction video, so if you stay after until the end, then you'll see that as well. This is a really long intro, so I'll let you get into the video. I'll have some voiceovers for you there, but really excited to share this with you. And all right, so here are the shirts that I have. These are my best friend's dad's shirts, and I have a couple of colors here to work with. So I have 7 shirts in total, 4 that are solids, and then I have the prints below, which I'll swap them out and show you in just a minute. But I went through and picked out as many of the 100% cotton ones that I could find. So I have 2 creamy colored ones, sort of like very light beige tanny colors. And this one is quite soft. This is a more sturdier, almost like khaki type fabric. This is a beautiful deep navy. Hopefully you're catching that. There's a sort of iridescence to it. It's like picking up when you see it sideways a little bit, but it's really nice. And this is just like your standard white button up. So I got the 100% cotton ones, and I'll flip it over so you can see how fun the printed ones are. So here are the printed ones, and it sort of just fell into a color story, and you have this sort of gingham or checkered print, pink and white one, really beautiful weave to this. And then you have this sort of plaid gingham blue one with all the different shades of blue, and this really awesome blue, pink, and white. So I felt like they went together really well. And because one of the quilts that I'm making is a baby quilt, it was really reminiscent of the baby blankets that you sort of get at the hospital. So I figured this would be a nice sort of gender neutral, sort of unisex heirloom blanket for, my friend to have for her baby. And for this one, which we know is going to be a baby boy, but for any other children that may come in the future. So here they are all together, so you can kind of see the color story beginning to build. And what I'm thinking, because I didn't tell my best friend this, but I do want to make her a quilt as well, like a lap quilt. And her house is mostly blues, deep navies, and like yellow and whites and gold and things like that. So I do want to preserve as much of the deep navy and this blue checkered sort of gingham one as possible, and the creams and the whites for hers, and then sort of double down on the pink, the mixed blue and pink one, and of course you know, the other khaki and white and such for the baby blanket, because I could, you know, make use of that. So I'll be judicious. I think tonight I'm gonna go ahead and start cutting them, like cutting out the collars and the yoke and the arms, so I can start laying out the fabric and really see what I have to work with. Most of these are extra larges, so I'm hoping that I get a lot of fabric to play with so that it would be enough for the baby blanket and also a lap blanket, and see what is left over. Looked up some free baby quilting blankets, like some easy ones. I found this Bloom and Bliss receiving blanket with half square triangles. Now, this being my first ever quilt, I wanted to pick something that was rather simple, and I know patchwork, like squares, is probably the simplest, but I think this could possibly be something that I'm willing to try. So it requires 8 10 by, basically like 16 10 by 10 squares. So with that in mind, I was checking out how much fabric I can get. So I have one of the shirts just opened. I removed the back yoke, the, you know, collar and the sleeves. So from a back of one of these, I can get, so 20 pretty neatly all the way up through the yoke there. So from one end of the yoke to the other, once I like press it and everything, by 20, right? So I can get 20 by 20, which is really nice. So that means that's 4 squares in just the back panel. All right, so kids are doing activities. What I'm gonna do is start cutting out the 10" by 10" squares. And I just have it folded in half here. There's probably a better method, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut with just like a smidge of space. Cut 10 inches, make sure it's squared off, extend it to 20, and then cut it by 10, open it flat, and then cut it in half. I think that's how I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Okay, so the first night of cutting is all done. I have 4 of each of the 10 by 10 squares. So that's 7 different shirts, 4 of them, so 28 10 by 10 squares total. I have some of the scraps. I cut those down into 4" by 10" for most of them, rectangles, and I'm going to use those to start on the other patchwork quilts. These are the bottom of the shirt tails and all my scraps. But yeah, I still have quite a bit of fabric left, and that's not even including all of the sleeves. So lots to use for the other quilt that I want to make for my friend. I said I was done for the evening, but I just had to test one of these out. I went ahead and, using sort of my own edit to this lovely pattern, I've paired my fabrics up so that tomorrow I can get started with sewing. So those are there. But while this pattern uses just half square triangles, I saw a YouTube video of how to use 10 by 10 squares to do 8 half square triangles. So of course I had to test that out. I went ahead and did my stitches. I messed up a little bit here, so just figuring out my learning curve. I'm not sure if I'm meant to backstitch. I don't know that I've heard that, so maybe I don't need to, and that's just creating bulk. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. I cut in between the lines that I drew, and I cut straight down, and that should give me 8 of the triangles. And then I'll see about moving this cutting mat so I can just press them really quickly so I have that satisfaction before I go to bed. Now I love my Burnett machine, I really do, and I hope to do a review of it for you. But when the bobbin is almost running out and the machine stops with this warning sign, I have not enjoyed that. So I put on this foot, and that's been so helpful. So I use this as a guide on the line that I'm sewing. Now, not all of the lines were straight, guys. Remember, this is my first quilt, but they do get better. And I'm using a hack, I guess, I don't know, something to help you get speedy, so I'm chain stitching them. In addition to that, I had cut off from the offcuts after cutting out the 10 by 10 squares as much of the 10 by 4 squares as possible. So I'm going to try and align these in a decent way, stitch them together, because I'm assuming down the line I can use it for sashing. I know sashing is a word. I don't know exactly how it works, but I'm just going to make as much use of all of the pieces. So I'm just trying to see like how I want to split it up. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and set these up and start stitching them together. Okay, so initially I just said that this one was a game changer because I was using this little line here on top of the line or the marking that I put on the actual sheet for like this tile. You can see I made some mistakes, and then put this on and then use this to sort of guide and ride right along the line, and that sort of helped me keep it straight. But this foot is amazing. I hope I'm putting the feet name on the screen because my brain is mush. I don't know what it's called, but look at how great that is. So I used my seam gauge, another nifty little tool, and just like made sure that, you know, the like edge of this to the needle was 1/4 inch. No, 1/4 inch, and position my needle where it needed to be and whatnot. Sorry, not that. I was playing with tension earlier. Put my needle where it needs to be so that it measures 1/4 inch, and I'm in business, guys. I'm really excited about this. Let me keep going and stop talking. Okay, so I just spent the evening trimming off all the little corners of all the squares, making them really nice and neat, hopefully, and squaring them off and getting them all down to the same size. So not too bad, but definitely not all perfect squares. Made some progress this evening. So this is the majority of the quilt top. I am about to press it now. I had pressed, you know, the initial half triangle blocks together. Again, following the Bloom and Bliss Receiving Blanket, this free pattern guide here. So I'll link that. But I want to add a little bit of decorative detailing to mine. So I, with the offcuts from some of these, went and made this really long runner. I actually am just in the process of rolling it up real nice and tight here because I'm not going to be working with it tonight. So I'm just going to roll that up and save it for tomorrow. But I am hoping to put that around as like a border. So hopefully I have long enough. I just used what I had available. I do want to save these like navy and tan squares for the blanket and the quilt I'm going to make for my best friend. But this, for the baby blanket, anything that I have that includes the pink, I really want to use up in this blanket. I had also pieced together these offcuts, which I rolled, and this is quite long as well. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it down into like narrower strips. What happened is that the navy was a little bit shorter, so I lose about an inch off the top of those, but for the most part everything else should be fine and good to go. It's a new day, it's Friday, and we're back with the quilt. So I have most of the quilt top done. I'm trying to add some length and add a border. This is going to be the only thing on the quilt top, at least, that is not from like their dad's shirts. So it's this really nice, I think it's a great contrast and complement to the blues in here, but I needed something to sort of break up and frame the pattern. And while I do have more of the navy shirt, I do want to save some of that for my best friend's quilt. And honestly, I just did not feel like cutting bias binding out of that. So what I want to do now, I had sewn a whole bunch of half square triangles that I made. And I made these using the 10-inch squares, sandwiched 2 of them together and did like the X and then cut it 4 times. So I have these like smaller sets, which are just adorable. And because I want that to like act as a border around the quilt, I didn't really want to like lay this right on top of the main quilt without having something that like defined it and broke it up. So that's why I'm adding this, just a solid color. I'm gonna put this around the edge. I don't know, let me just check while I have you all here. What I was curious about is whether or not like 2 of these fits neatly. Yep, that's what I suspected, it doesn't. So because this was like cut twice or whatever the dimensions worked out to, and then I had to add an additional seam, you can see it doesn't fit right within that square. I would call this a 10-inch square, but even that is not exactly 10 inches, whatever the case is. I think it's also nice to have the solid color to break it up for that reason, because I knew if I were to put them together, they wouldn't line right up, then it would look a little bit strange. But with that buffer in between, it really doesn't matter if it's off center or not, because it's not really serving as like a direct line up to the larger squares. I hope some of that made sense. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and sew that on. I think I'm only doing it to these 2 sides, like the top and the bottom, and not along the edges. I don't know if I have enough, and also I think it would make it too wide for the batting that I got. I got the crib size batting, which is 45 inches to 60 inches, and currently this measures on its width about 40 inches. Then that's before I add the border as well, so it's gonna definitely catch up to the 45, and I don't want to have to piece together batting or do any of that. So I'm only gonna add these smaller half square triangles to the borders on like either side of it, and not all 4 sides. You get what I'm saying? Okay, let's start. All right, so this is our quilt. This is the quilt top, and looking at it all done, like I haven't had a space to lay it out yet. It's where I could see all of it, but I really love it. It's beautiful. Now, in thinking of it now that I see it, it would have been nice to have these dark ones sort of anchor each other, maybe like here, 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 and here, and that way they like go together and kind of centralize. But I remember being very adamant on having one of these printed shirts and the navy in a row. So if you kind of look across or up and down, really, then you kind of see that there's only one of them per row. So that's just how it worked out, but I really love it. Now I have added the batting and have my quilt sandwich, and this is the backing. So now it's time to quilt it, which I'm really excited about. So this entire week I've been watching a lot of quilting YouTube, as you do when you learn a new thing and you have to actually learn it. And they said that pool noodles are excellent ways to like roll up the quilt, because now I'm getting to the actual quilting part, which I'm a little bit nervous about, but really excited. And I've been trying to think, like, will I do just like some straight lines? Will I stitch in the ditch? Will I do some free motion quilting? Not sure. What I think I'm leaning towards right now is stitch in the ditch for majority of them, and then to do some free motion quilting like in this really light center section. I think that will look really nice. Yeah. And because I think the stitch in the ditch will obviously kind of hold it majority in place. And then maybe I could do some line work and do like a stitch next to the ditch because the cotton batting that I'm using, you can quilt about 10 inches apart. So that's nice. And then I might do like smaller triangles within the triangles, like kind of frame them. And that way I would do the 10, but then mostly stitch in the ditch as the initial. I think that's what I'm going to lean with. So I'm going to go ahead and roll this up on my pool noodle and then take it over to the machine. I picked up the quilting threads in these options. I don't think I'm going to do the white, although that could be quite like, you know, the quintessential stitching. I don't know. Should I do white? I have this like navy color, which matches with this really nice. And then I have like a lighter blue. What would you do? How do you decide what stitching color? I don't know. Let me YouTube some videos and just get some recommendations quickly. Let's see. So we're in the full swing of the actual quilting process, and I wanted to show you how I have it. So I use the pool noodle to roll it up and then just have it sort of seated in my lap. As I'm going through, I'm doing a stitch in the ditch, and let me be the first to say, sewing in a straight line is not the easiest thing. So I'm using this blind hem foot, and I've positioned the needle directly behind that guide in the front, and that is really helping me stay within the groove as I stitch in the ditch. I'm going around each of the triangles as well as the edges to make sure that I have the stitches no more than 10 inches apart. Also, what no one tells you is how much of a workout and how much of your body is involved in the actual quilting process. My shoulders and arms were like sore the very next day. All right, so I am about to try and finish up with the binding that I made. So I was really trying to make use of all the scraps. So I had sewn together just all of the offcuts that I had, and then stitched them together, cut that into 3 pieces, and then had a strip that looked a bit like this, sort of like those cinnamon buns or jelly rolls or honey buns, or, you know, what those quilters have. And to make my binding, it is not cut on the bias, but it hopefully will work. I have just kind of stitched around, and thank goodness I had enough. Like, look at how much is left. I was just like, I did not measure it. I was just living on a prayer, guys. But it seems like it might work. The idea is that I would press it down so that this edge is clean, flip it over, I guess, and then stitch it in place somehow, figure it out. I did serge the ends, which I might go back in and cut. I just really needed a way to have a clean finish without a lot of hassle. Yeah, they're not meant to like line up or match up with anything. It's just like random strips cut at about 3 inches. So I'm really excited about this. Wish me luck, guys. We're almost there. So for my first quilt, I'm quite happy with how things turned out. This is the back side, and I just went ahead and did sort of like a stitch in the ditch for all of the half square triangles on the front side. So that's the design that you see on the back. All right, so here we are. I don't have a surface large enough right now to show you, but there it is. It's all quilted up. So I'm stopping for the evening. I went ahead and started attaching the binding to it. So I stitched it and pressed it, and we'll be folding it over. I started doing that, and so I like the way that it's gonna look. Like, I like the way that that looks folded over. I think a solid color would have been nice, but yeah, I don't mind it. I really do like it. And I started doing it with a machine stitch. You can tell I'm tired. I can't even speak. A machine stitch with a stitch in the ditch. And while it looks okay on the top, this is what the back started doing. And I mean, I didn't do all of this hard work to have this look so janky. So I decided to stop before I went all the way around and trying to like power through. And then I thought, why? It's been a nice, really beautiful and intentional slow sew throughout this week, and I kind of want to give it that respect and honor my first quilt. So I'm stopping for the evening and we'll revisit this tomorrow. I may actually choose to hand quilt the binding, actually, because it's been all machine quilted. It would be nice to have like a hand quilted element in it. Any hoosers, I feel like I'm in a really good spot tonight, so I'm going to just rest. I didn't end up doing the free motion embroidery. I just did the stitch in the ditch, and that's what's holding the quilt together now, just because I really wanted to kind of see it done. I don't know if I will choose to do anything different. I think this might be how I actually leave it and just finish with the binding. But I'm so excited about this, guys. How did I do for my first quilt? Here is the baby quilt after a wash and dry. It has the cotton batting on the inside. I had a strip of the various shirtings. That's what I used as the binding on the end there. And these plain strips are bias binding that I pressed open and used just to create some contrast. I used the same decorative stitch on the ends and again did a stitch in the ditch, and that's what's holding everything together. I'm really excited about it, and I like all the crinkles from it being in the washing machine. It really does feel more blanket-like. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up too. So it has the same border on the top as well.
All right, so we're opening it. Oh, so this is from Fatima? Okay, we're opening.
Cosmo's here as well, clearly.
Cosmo's excited to see what we got. Cosmo, what do you think it is? Okay, we're opening. And we got baby Otoboto wrapped in Grandpa's love. My grandpa didn't love me so, even though he did not know how I look or how I grow. His love for me was remarkable, though I could not hold his hand. Mom, oh my gosh. Mom tells me he was an awesome man. I'll be wrapped in a blanket of his love, knowing his smiling all from up above. I'll cuddle up in my swaddle too, in a great big hug like Grandpa would do. It really is an interesting thing how much comfort Grandpa's love can bring. His booming voice and great big smile. And let's not forget his awesome style. I may not remember, but I'll never forget. Grandpa's love for me was tender, though we hadn't met. All that love passed down to me in this quilt and a cozy swaddle. That's the perfect fit. I'm forever wrapped in Grandpa's love. Oh, it's so sweet.
Yeah, sweet.
So went to the storage unit and got a bunch of daddy's shirts.
It's so thoughtful.
That's the most thoughtful gift I think we got all year.
Wow. And we got a blanket.
Wow.
I think I remember this like handkerchief.
Is that also made from?
Or is this a shirt? Is this shirts?
It's a bunch of his shirts.
Oh, I remember these shirts.
That is so cool.
That is so nice.
Okay, we can't see it, honey.
Okay.
Oh.
Let me see.
Wow, look at that. Look at the pattern. It's actually a really cool pattern.
This was a shirt. That's such a nice thing.
This is just incredibly cool.
So she made one for me too.
Some videos that you can expect moving forward. will include a video of me making another sort of blanket for my best friend, and that video will include some of my tips and tricks for a beginner that I learned along the way, some that really helped me do it as efficiently as possible because I was on quite the time crunch by the time I thought of the idea, and also to the holidays when I wanted to gift it to them. But it was successful and I'm really excited about it. In addition to that, I made a baby swaddle using one of their dad's old sweaters, and that is a project that I'm still amazed that I made. So I'm really excited that I documented it so I can also share that with you. These are just those gifts that you really put a lot of love and thought into it, and you're just like really blown away to see the reactions of the recipients. If you've ever considered making a quilt for someone, particularly an heirloom quilt of a loved one that has passed on, then I would say go for it. It's one of those things that your efforts will not be wasted. It is such a sentimental and sweet gift, and I can say that I am so happy to have had this ability to do this small act of kindness for two people that are so special to me.